I know you. You're that jaywalking punk anarchist.
Alrighty, hello, folks. Radical Reviewer here. I a year ago did a video on this guy, Awaken with JP. Obviously, I'm not a fan here. It says Awaken with JP is an effing moron. But the video did okay for my channel, about 30,000 views almost. But more importantly than that, I think, is the comments, because this video, for some reason, still gets comments 1 day ago, 3 days ago, 3 days ago. And not only that, comments from chuds, which we like to see. We like to reach viewers that the Radical Reviewer crowd doesn't often reach. So for a while, I thought about addressing Awaken with JP again. But every time that I check back on him, his videos are boring. They're really short. There's not a lot of content to them. There's not a lot of claims being made. So I've put off readdressing Awaken with JP. However, recently I checked, and sure enough, Awaken with JP has come out with 2 videos I think are worth going over. Before starting, I do want to make 2 clarifications before we jump into Awaken with JP as a moron part 2. First thing I'd like to clarify is a lot of chuds, a lot of JP fans in the comments section here. If you see, if I go Control F and do satire, they don't understand that it's okay to critique someone who's doing comedy but also promoting a message, right? So we've got, you're an idiot, it's called satire, he's a comedian, you're a dumbass, okay? Let's whitewash this ridiculous precedent and act like JP is trying to give a detailed news story when he's just using satire. It's called satire. You can Google it if you aren't sure of the meaning, right? So these people seem to think that because there is comedy and satire in Awaken with JP's content, that he is, I guess, above scrutiny. I don't know. I think maybe the viewers of Awaken with JP might be morons as well, because there's a lot of comedy information sources out there. You've got The Onion, you've got Louder with Crowder, The Daily Show, SNL, Last Week Tonight, Some More News, and this JP person himself. They're using comedy and satire to promote a political agenda. So, yeah, any fans of JP who stumble upon this video, yes, I realize he's a comedian, but just because he's attempting to be funny when he's making his arguments, that doesn't mean his arguments are immune to criticism. All right? Speaking of some more news, let's actually do a little bit of a comparison here, because if we go to some more news, this is sort of the leftist of the comedy news shows. And look, they even have a similar disheveled look thing going on. But if we go to some more news and we go to Awaken with JP, I want you to notice a difference here. Awaken with JP's stuff isn't all this fake news broadcast situation, but some of his.
Let you know in my freedom.
So if we go to his description box, we've got buy my merch, go to my comedy show, subscribe to my podcast, follow me on Facebook. This is normal stuff. This is about what my description box looks like. So, not too crazy, not too surprising. But if we go to some more news, granted, some more news videos are like an hour long. Awaken with JP's videos are like a little over 10 minutes. But if we go to the description here, we get the same stuff. Survey, merch, buy our this or that. But then we get this, a source list. Oh, how interesting. How quaint. Not only a lot of sources to go off of here, many cited sources. They're from all over the map. You know, we've got Fox, Reuters, Pew Research, New York Times, Pew Research, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, The Atlantic, NPR, Business Insider. The claims being made in some more news video here, in this video, lots of support, lots of evidence backing up what is being claimed here. And as we'll see in the minutes ahead, not the same for Mr. Awaken with JP. Rather than having cited sources, JP uses other methods to get his message across. One of the most common ones is what's called quote mining. Now, you probably know what quote mining is, but just to reiterate. So, quoting out of context, sometimes referred to as contextonomy or quote mining, is an informal fallacy in which a passage is removed from its surrounding matter in such a way as to distort its intended meaning. So we will see this in the minutes ahead when JP will play like a 3-second clip of someone saying something, completely out of context and then come to completely wrong conclusions about it. So that's a common method that JP uses. Another common thing is to use totally debunked, like hack news sources. You're going to find a lot of Babylon Bee, the Daily Wire, Turning Point USA, or whatever. That's the kind of stuff he's going to be citing. And even then, if you see, he's never even quoting like the articles and stuff. It'll just be like the article title or something like that. But the most common method of argumentation that he's going to use, as we'll see, is to just make super outrageous claims with no evidence and just don't not even support it at all. So let's keep those two things in mind. One, yes, JP is attempting comedy, and that doesn't mean that he is not promoting arguments. He is, in fact, promoting arguments. It's an information, news, comedy YouTube channel. There's plenty of them out there. I am critiquing the ideas he's presenting. Get over it. And two, he will use very crappy methods of substantiating his claims in the videos ahead. So without further ado, let's get to them. The two that I want to look at today are We're Here to Brainwash You news update, and then a news update from a couple days ago. We want to take away your constitutional rights. So let's start with this first one here. And let's rewind back here to the beginning and give it a look.
Democracy is not perfect. It's never been good.
Wow! President Brandon says democracy's never been good? We'll take a closer look at that in a moment, along with our other top stories tonight around gun control, tyrannical Trudeau, Nancy Pelosi's husband gets arrested, woke companies are spinelessly virtue signaling again, and Joe Biden says he's against gay marriage. Yep. I mean, those are his words, not mine. You'll see. All that tonight in an effort to help you have your constitutional rights taken away. But before we get to what Joe Biden said, let's take a closer look at what President Brandon said.
Democracy is not perfect. It's never been good.
Was it a gaffe?
Was it a gaffe? Was it a gaffe?
I say objection, Your Honor. That is speculation. Objection sustained. Let's watch the whole clip.
Democracy has never been perfect. Democracy's never been good. Let's see if that was Joe Biden's actual argument here. Joe Biden, democracy has never been good. I think it was this one. Yep, looks like the same kind of layout. And the nice thing to do here, if you folks make content of your own, or if you're looking at long videos and trying to find a quote, you just go to show transcript here, and then democracy. Democracy's not perfect. Let's check it out. Let's see if President Joe Biden really thinks democracy's never been good and such. Let's see what he says.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we remember and we reaffirm freedom is worth the sacrifice. Democracy is not perfect. It's never been perfect. But it's worth fighting for. If necessary, worth dying for.
Oh man, it's almost like Joe Biden actually said the exact opposite. That even when democracy's not perfect, it's worth fighting for and even worth dying for. JP's a moron and totally wrong. Let's keep going.
Well, if we say it was, then we have to acknowledge that the only reason he would gaffe so often is because he's senile. And we don't want to do that, at least not until we have a puppet who's a suitable replacement for him. And God knows we're not even close. Instead, we'll just take a look at all the evidence of him destroying our democracy and make the logical conclusion that he doesn't think things like oppressive, freedom-granting democracies are good.
Democracy.
I think it's funny that he's saying Joe Biden is destroying our democracy when I'm pretty sure there's some commission hearings that have been going on lately that say someone else was trying to destroy our democracy. But, oh well, let's see.
Democracy is not perfect. It's never been good.
But communism's good, right, Joe?
What must be what?
I think he said my butt's been wiped.
What must be what?
Well, we're all very happy for you and your butt, President Brandon.
More quote miming, like, what does that even mean? It's a 2-second, 1-second quote that's hard to hear, but he's not really making an argument here, so let's keep going.
And right on schedule with the leftist playbook, in response to the recent school shootings, the leftists are politicizing the tragic loss of life in order to try to disarm the citizens of the U.S. In D.C., apparently with his butt freshly wiped, President Brandon told Americans, the Constitution and the Second Amendment have never been absolute. However, the Founding Fathers certainly intended for both the Constitution and the Second Amendment which grants citizens the right to bear arms to protect themselves from any citizen or government that intends them harm.
All right, so let's see here. The Founding Fathers, did they intend for the Second Amendment to be absolute? Now, I have made my stance on gun rights pretty blatantly on the channel here so far. I've done several videos on promoting gun ownership. You know, I believed, as Karl Marx did, that the workers should not be disarmed. But if we look here at 2A, what's it all about? A well-regulated militia. They have the shall not be infringed here, but the well-regulated right here, right? This is why we don't have personal nukes, right? We don't have personal warheads or Tomahawk missiles, right? So, regulated. I don't know. I noticed that he didn't read the actual line of the Second Amendment, and I wonder why. Interesting.
To be absolute. But according to a recent poll ran by Dominion, 11 out of 10 Americans trust Biden more than they trust the Founding Fathers. Because after all, the Founding Fathers were nothing but a bunch of racists, according to what we tell you.
They were racist, though, like historically, right? At the time, they're coming out on the heels of, like, social Darwinism. They believed in, like, slavery. They saw other cultures and other skin colors and races around the world as inferior or superior based on, like, what we now understand to be pseudoscience, right? But, okay.
In other news, it apparently still won't get you deplatformed for reporting on how Biden gave the eulogy at the funeral of a KKK leader, where he called the KKK leader a friend. And
That's racist!
All right, so Biden gave a eulogy for a KKK leader, or I guess maybe recruiter. Let's check this out. Let's see what we have about it. What's this guy's name? Joe Biden eulogy for Robert Byrd. Joe Biden eulogy Robert Byrd. Fact check. Robert Byrd eulogized by Joe Biden. Huh. Social media users have been sharing content online that claims Democratic President nominee Joe Biden eulogized Robert Byrd, asserting that he was the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. This claim is partly false. Oh, but potentially partly true? Let's find out. Though various prominent politicians eulogized Byrd at his funeral, the senator was never the Grand Wizard of the KKK. Oh, the senator. So he was a senator. And he has acknowledged and apologized for his membership during his youth. All right, so not great that he was a member of the KKK, but it sounds like this guy was literally just a senator. So probably Joe Biden, who is also a senator, along with a lot of other politicians, probably eulogized this person if he was a senator as well. Doesn't sound like he was eulogized for being racist. It sounds like he was eulogized for being a senator. All right, let's keep it going.
And mentor. In other news, as Biden has been busy trying to disarm the U.S. population because...
Has Biden been busy trying to disarm the population? Big, huge claim. Zero evidence, Mr. JP.
His weapons are dangerous. The somehow shockingly accurate media outlet, the Babylon Bee, reports, guns should not be in the hands of the mentally unstable, says senile man with nukes.
All right, so interesting. We got a Babylon Bee article here. We recognize, I'd like to think that people with different positions, different levels of authority have access to different things. So it's disanalogous. They do this, Republicans do this one a lot where they'll say like, oh, this famous politician wants, to do background checks on citizens who have guns, and yet they have, armed security detail with them. That's not contradictory. That's not hypocritical. A politician with a security detail will probably want that security detail to have background checks and stuff too. They're also a public figure, so they're a little bit more, in the limelight as far as like detractors, or people who want to assassinate them, more so than the average person just walking around, right?
And as the current wave of mass formation psychosis has those with their eyes glazed over ragefully obediently doing as they're told, Turning Point USA reports, a month ago, leftists protested in the streets to send guns to Ukraine. A week ago, they protested in the streets to kill children with abortion. And now they're protesting in the streets for gun control to save children. Also,
nice. So Turning Point USA meme, very good source of news and factual information. Leftists protesting in the streets to send guns to Ukraine is not crazy. If a large country invades a smaller country and a war takes off, I can understand wanting to send weapons to people in a war zone and find that to be very different than civilian ownership during non-war times. But okay. As far as protesting in the streets to kill children with abortion, this is probably my favorite abortion video. Let's go to history and abortion. This one right here. Abortion and philosophy tube, is the discussion over? So a lot of discussions, particularly on the left, around abortion is about, when does consciousness begin? When does a fetus become a person? Because there's obviously levels of quote-unquote abortion that a lot of people are okay with. You wouldn't throw someone in jail for a miscarriage and say that they committed murder, right? Or, if the fetus was like non-viable or something, right? But there has to be, some criteria to which personhood is established. And then so many people will say, well, personhood isn't established until there's brain activity. Personhood isn't established until the fetus is out of the body and interacting with the wider world at large, and it starts developing, personhood at that point. This video actually, I think, has a more substantial argument, which is that it's about the duty to rescue. So an analogous to abortion might be inviting a friend to go swimming. So if you invite a friend to go swimming, it is a risky thing to do. If you invite a friend to have sex in which a birth or pregnancy or whatever might come about it, that's risky as well, right? These are two risky choices where the people involved are choosing to engage in the risky behavior, knowing that there are risks. Now, with the drowning friend, if the friend starts to drown and you're like, I don't trust my swimming skills that well, I think that if I tried to help them drown, it could result in both of us drowning. It's just going to be a big mess. The government probably shouldn't come in and force you to save your drowning friend, even if it is your fault that the two of you decided to go swimming that day. This is analogous with abortion because even though you and this other person agreed to engage in an activity that had a potential to cause a pregnancy, the government shouldn't force you to maintain that life, just like it shouldn't in other situations force you to rescue someone. So highly recommend this video on abortion. I think that the arguments therein are fascinating. Let's keep it going.
And now they're protesting in the streets for gun control to save children. Also, we probably shouldn't point out, but we will, as DC Drano points out, the leftist support for Ukraine has grown so strong and so genuine that now they've put the Ukraine flag colors on the gay pride flag.
If y'all follow me on Twitter, you might know I'm somewhat active there on Twitter. Follow lots of lefty people. I have never seen this flag before in my life. Probably it's a meme. Probably some trolling. I don't think this is genuine, but let's keep going.
As you can see here. We'll also point out that gay marriage is banned in Ukraine.
Gay marriage is banned in Ukraine. Oh my goodness. The left is wrecked. Oh, except for that's not how we decide how things go. Well, for one, same-sex marriage being banned in Ukraine is probably not as bad as the way same-sex relationships are treated in Russia. Imprisoning people for homosexuality seems a little bit worse. But it's also not how you decide foreign policy. If a larger country invades a smaller country and starts killing the people, it's not an endorsement of all of that country's policies or stances to say that invasion is wrong. Let's put aid here, cut aid here, send armaments here. That's not an endorsement of all of their policies, right? You're standing up against the invasion because, a larger country going and invading and taking over part of a smaller country. It's not a good look. It wasn't a good look when the US did it in Iraq. It's not a good look here for Russia.
Seems weird, but not when you understand that only highly principled people passionately stand for things that they don't understand. Because highly principled people are very good at doing what they're told, rather than allowing their actions to arise out of their own morals, values, and critical thinking. Because that's what those brainwashed freedom lovers do. They do things that make sense to their own brain. That sounds both dangerous and like it won't get you virtue signaling points.
Oh, he caught me. I'm so into the virtue signaling points. No, What I do like, though, he didn't say common sense here, but in a way, he's kind of saying, oh, this is using common sense, which is like such a thought-terminating cliche, right?
And in news north of the border, the clump of flesh that's cut off during gender reassignment surgery, who is also the living, breathing reason why Canadians need guns, Justin Trudeau, has made headlines once again as he bans the sale of handguns.
We're introducing legislation to implement
Canada.
a national freeze on handgun ownership. What this means is that it will no longer be possible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada.
As he stands in a field with many grazing sheep behind him, he sure looks like Castro for some reason. And he also sounds definitely super genuine as he's minimizing how much Canadians can protect themselves from him. As Trudeau wants to ban guns, it's worth noting that he keeps a heavily armed security team around him at all times.
Wow, it's exactly the argument that I just said is BS. There's definitely a difference between being like a head of state who's at risk from like assassination from foreign powers or from like revolutionary or insurrectionist groups within your own country. You're definitely at a higher risk than like Bill that works at the gas station or like whatever, right?
That's weird, and probably better not to think about. Because after all, it's different. Because it says right here, you have to have rules for thee, but not for me, if you're doing a tyrannical dictatorship. And in other news, horse medication addict Joe Rogan says that if you ban guns, then only criminals will have guns. No, Joe, that's not true. Because the government will have guns too. This Justin! No, technically that still means only criminals will have guns. Okay, stand corrected.
JP makes an almost correct
Speaker
point.
of the
Nice.
House and head crypt keeper Nancy Pelosi has a husband who's unfortunately married to her.
God, do
His
they
name
hate
is
Nancy.
Paul, and he was arrested over the weekend
I mean,
for
like,
a
she sucks or
DUI.
whatever,
During
but
this hard time, many
just
Americans are struggling with how
bad,
to
right?
cope with having their favorite insider trader's husband arrested. But Chad Prather stepped in to help Americans cope with this understanding. Nancy Pelosi's husband arrested for DUI. If she was your wife, you'd be drinking and trying to get away too. That's officially all that needs to be said about that. In honor of
Alright, I don't
June
care about
being
that story at all, but, like, I guess
LGBTQ&A
that's funny,
Pride
yeah.
Month, many woke companies are woke-washing their social media with pride colors in the US and UK, but not other countries for some reason.
Yeah, this is a normal thing like the left has critiqued forever, right? Woke washing, rainbow capitalism in places where rainbow capitalism is acceptable and not where rainbow capitalism is not acceptable. Yeah, I guess it's like cringe or whatever. It's phony. They're being insincere. But I prefer insincere good ideas to insincere bad ideas. I prefer this to, you know, a BMW Proud Boy logo in the US and then a plain one in the Middle East, right? Also, it's good to have them show that they are willing to gesture in a positive direction so that way when they're caught being contradictory, like for example, YouTube did like a pride thing, but then they were still censoring a lot of, you know, LGBT content as not safe for children, even if it was just meant to be educational, right? You pull stuff like that and you say, look, here's your rainbow logo. Yeah, here's your policy. You point to the contradiction, right? So rainbow capitalism is fine and good, and I like it.
Because the companies stand for nothing, as you can see here. These companies believe that going woke in certain demographics is profitable in the short term before their stock completely crashes in the long term. And that's just good business planning. And it being Pride Month, we all know that there is no one more inclusive than Joe Biden. So to honor his shining example of inclusivity, here's a video of Joe Biden talking about gay pride from back when he was able to control his own thinking.
We already have a law, the Defense of Marriage Act, where we've all voted, not where I voted and others said, look, marriage is between a man and a woman and states must respect that. Why do we need a constitutional amendment? Marriage is between a man and a woman. What's the game going on here?
Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for tonight's news.
So, yeah, this is obviously I mean, look at the quality of this picture. This is obviously from, like, 90s or something. Maybe it's from, like, the early 2000s. Yeah, things change with the times. The Clintons in the 90s were all rah, 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 tough on crime, because that was like the rhetoric that won them support from their constituents. And now that, we as a society are like, the war on drugs was a failure. Mass incarceration of U.S. citizens was a failure. Now the Clintons and other Democrats are saying it was a mistake. War on drugs was a mistake. A politician said something that was like acceptable and supported by the general public 30 years ago or whatever, and they have since like changed their mind. Okay, big shock.
Why do we need a constitutional amendment? Marriage is between...
That's it for tonight's news. Giving up your constitutional rights is the best thing you can do to protect your freedom.
He gave no support for that claim, but okay.
Trudeau and the people running Biden have your best interests at heart.
Trudeau and the people running Biden? Like Trudeau is running Biden also?
Right, fact checkers? That's right.
I like how they make fun of fact checkers. It's just like, oh, you know what we should do instead of being accurate? We should just make fun of people for thinking being factually accurate is like a good thing, but okay.
Tune in tomorrow night to find out how well communism will work when we get everyone disarmed and we can finally implement it the right way.
Guess what? Disarming people isn't part of communism. Let me find that like a Marx gun quote here. Hopefully that will come up with it. Under no pretense should arms and ammunition be surrendered. Any attempt to disarm the workers must be frustrated by force if necessary. Based Marx. The workers shall be armed, right? So if you are attempting to institute something along the lines of from each according to ability to each according to need, worker control of the means of production communism, and you think taking everyone's guns away is part of that, you did it wrong, right?
Good night.
Good night.
Green screen.
And now the rest...
It's just
that's
in.
like a big chunk of the video. The rest is him like shilling his crap. So you shill your crap on your own time, buddy. All right. Let's look at the last one we have here. We're here to brainwash you. News update. Let's go.
Good evening. The Johnny Depp trial is over, and the verdict is you've been distracted from what's really going on.
All right. First off, the look, right? What is this, like crushed satin or something with like some filigree and no shirt? Not gonna lie, it's a pretty cool look. Also, so is this what the Johnny Depp trial has been designed to distract us from? Obama, Stalin, Antichrist, illegal immigrant, Hitler, Obama? Bill, he's putting computers into the vaccine gates and the World Economic Forum? Ooh, spooky. This is who really controls everything. He's maybe just making a joke, but like he is virtue signaling with this like remember how we hate Obama? Remember how we hate frickin' Bill Gates? You know, where's the Trilateral Commission on here? Where's like the CDC, should be up here, right? Oh, remember how we hate these guys?
And tonight's top hypnotic soul-severing stories are Biden's anti-gun speech, Pride Month, Gatorade wants you to be fat, the viewer comment of the week, more stuff about why you should have no right to gun rights, and what has the rage mob raging especially hard, even for them. Stay tuned to find out. As Edward Scissorhands convincingly won the trial in a score of you're supposed to forget about the Ghislaine Maxwell trial and the fact that we haven't heard even one name named out of Epstein's black book full of names to nothing.
Oh, good point, JP, kind of. Yeah, so the Ghislaine Maxwell trial is probably way more important than the Johnny Depp trial, right? However, news is a business, right? They require viewerships for ad revenues. So if we do Google search trends, I would bet, and let's do Johnny Depp. Look at that. Johnny Depp, pretty popular because he's like on his trial thing, right? And then let's compare that to, is it Ghislaine Maxwell? I have no idea how this is spelled. Let's Google it. Google, tell us how it's spelled. Ghislaine Maxwell. So if we compare Johnny Depp searches to Ghislaine Maxwell, oh man, what do you know? Even though it is more important, and I do think it should be covered, it's just not gonna bring in the viewership, right? News that is made for profit, news that is made to sell advertising is probably gonna look a little bit more like TMZ than C-SPAN. And that's unfortunate because there's a lot of C-SPAN level boring coverage that is not going to be seen, while the TMZ level stuff is getting seen all the time. And it's more to this than just the popularity of Johnny Depp versus Ghislaine Maxwell, by the way. It also has to do with the fact that the Johnny Depp trial is not federal, and so it's able to be filmed. And so in your eye-catching, click-grabbing media atmosphere, you want to play some clips from the trial, rather than Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, which is federal, can't be filmed, and you only get the boring pictures, right? So a lot leads into this, and it's not just like some big conspiracy to like distract you from the one by focusing on the other. Like, this is unfortunately how capitalism works when your news market is based on advertising.
Also points out that Mr. Depp has officially become the first man to ever win an argument with a woman. And in heartwarming news, a group of pedophiles put on a drag show for children in Dallas, Texas.
A group of pedophiles? Interesting. Convicted pedophiles?
And here you can see a small child stuffing money into the pants of one of the sex offenders. The neon sign-on during the show said, "It's not gonna lick itself." Huh.
So that sign, super unfortunate, not a good look. I do think like that was probably already there and is not hung up and turned on as part of their child friendly one or whatever. But going to my Twitter here, boy, I tweet a lot. A lot of people are making this comparison, right? So, oh, what's happening at these pride events or these drag shows? And here, this kind of thing, like I've been to. I have a conservative side to my family, went to plenty of rock shows with like the bikini ladies that are selling the calendar to support the rock and roll radio station. You go to car shows and they have women in the bikinis posing on the cars. What are other examples? People have posted a lot of like taking their kids to Hooters and stuff like that. When I was a little pup, maybe, this kid's age or something, I went to this old-timey town as like a tourist thing where it's all done up like it's a Western. And they had these ladies that were supposed to be like Wild West style prostitutes. And they would pull up their, skirt and you put money in the girder and you get your picture taken putting money in the girder. This isn't grooming, right? Like this is like a normal, it's just because one is a little bit more LGBT, accepting or supporting, where this is just like, Trump babes. What's wrong with this, right? And then, of course, the more extreme ones would be like purity balls, right? That conservatives do, or they have like the father like marrying the daughter or some crap. I mean, what is this? If not, this is some grooming shit if I've ever seen it, right? Purity balls or the child beauty pageants, right? Give me a break. That look at it, his face is like the disgust. Oh my goodness, there was like people in sequins dancing for children. I don't know. If I was gonna pick which one is grooming and which one's like inappropriate use of sequence with a minor, I would definitely say this crap that is super popular with conservatives is the real culprit, and not like putting $1 in someone's like waistband or something, right? They're only mad at this because of the LGBT angle to it. They don't care. They're just mad at the LGBT angle. But what are you going to do?
I wonder what that means. And Disney's Mickey Mouse has reportedly had a substantial erection since hearing of the sexualization of these children.
Ha 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 ha. Get it? Because we're conservatives and we think that like because Disney is supporting more LGBT stuff in like their films or whatever, only in the US, but still, then Disney is all full of pedophiles now. Because, when I'm a conservative, the support for LGBT stuff and pedophilia is like the same thing, and I don't understand the difference, right?
In an effort to help fight the fitness epidemic that is drastically lengthening lifespans, Gatorade is taking the fitness industry by storm with their new ad for a product that apparently helps you reach your desired levels of obesity.
Oh no, people who are of different sizes than like me, they're also working out. Let's see if this is really like the nightmare that he says it is. Is it a nightmare? Is Gatorade really making everything worse? Gatorade commercial? I watched it already. It's not that bad. Let's have a look.
Introducing Gatorade Fit.
Oh, wow.
Fitness starts from the inside out. Get healthy,
That lady
real
is way better
hydration.
at
And
yoga
no
than I
added
am.
sugar, artificial sweeteners, or added colors. Fitness starts from within. Gatorade Fit. Healthy.
This commercial with 3 people in it, 2 of which are like very stereotypical commercially, accepting body sizes and stuff for a Gatorade commercial, and then 1 person that's like a fuller size person. That's like the death of health and fitness for this guy, apparently. It's just a commercial about drinking their hydration stuff while you work out. She's working out. What's the problem?
Desired levels of obesity. And on with the fear-mongering we go. In response to our beloved plan to capitalize off mass shootings to disarm U.S. citizens,
A plan to use mass shootings to disarm citizens. Let's see if he gives any evidence of that.
President Brandon gave an address about guns where he attempted to read off a teleprompter while being surrounded by heavily armed guards and Secret Service members who were off camera.
Oh, again, I don't understand the difference between, a head of state having a security detail or like even a famous celebrity or something having a security detail versus like an everyday person. Again, I've been very clear on my channel. I think that if you are in a position where you feel like you want to carry a weapon to defend yourself, you should be allowed to do so. I would recommend getting a concealed carry permit and carried one concealed, and also some training to go along with that. But that is my stance. And I am correct and based and right. And his pointing vaguely at the hypocrisy of like, oh, well, Joe Biden has security detail. Dumb. That's an invalid argument.
Take a look.
For so many of you at home, I want to be very clear. This is not about taking away anyone's guns.
What? The big intro to this was about how it is a plan to take away people's guns. But what did he say?
Be clear. This is not about taking away anyone's guns. It's not about vilifying gun owners.
Responsible gun ownership is very important to our nation.
Ha 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 ha. Very old man who like grew up with a speech impediment said gum instead of gun on TV. Ha 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 ha. That's like the joke? Okay.
Because we all know how frustrating it can be when you step in gum. Excellent points as always, sir. Following his very strong stance against gum, he then read what someone else wrote for him to say about gun manufacturers' immunity. Take a look.
We should repeal the liability shield that often protects gun manufacturers from being sued for the death and destruction caused by their weapons. They're the only industry in this country that has that kind of immunity.
Only manufacturer with that kind of immunity? Of course, I can't think of a single other example that we're allowed to talk about.
Okay, so obviously we're going to get the COVID vaccine bashing in here. I'm not a legal expert, but I feel like I've seen enough commercials about like certain types of like birth control class action lawsuit. I'm pretty sure you're more than welcome, if you have credible evidence and stuff, to take, pharmaceutical companies to court, right? He's just pretending like that doesn't exist. Okay.
In mixed messaging news, Mr. President also said, I am convinced that a criminal who wants a firearm can get one through illegal, untraceable, unregistered sources with or without gun control. What? Why would he say that? Oh, he said that back in 1985 when he still had his cognitive abilities.
But wait, you have not shown him saying anything contrary to this, right? I'm convinced that a criminal who wants a firearm can get one through illegal, untraceable, and unregistered sources with or without gun control. He might still have that stance. You have yet to show anything that he has said in recent months or that contradicts this. He can still hold that position.
Prior to his brain functioning like a pliable pile of Play-Doh that elites with dirt on him can use for their agendas.
Source?
So I'm sure we should have more faith in what he's told to say now. Nonetheless, Biden courageously pressed on in his battle with a teleprompter when he said this.
The Second Amendment, like all other rights, is not absolute.
But it's not all.
We covered this already, right? It's not absolute. There already are restrictions on it,
All fun and games. As the critics point out that for a president that wants to disarm the U.S. population...
A president who wants to disarm the U.S. population? Source needed on this one, buddy. You literally showed a clip of him saying He doesn't want to take away people's guns, and he doesn't want to vilify gun owners. So do you care to prove anything about this claim, or no? You're just going to keep saying like that's what's going on without any evidence?
He sure isn't addressing the possibility that a future administration could become corrupt with an authoritarian agenda and then could easily oppress the now disarmed US population into absolute enslavement, as has happened many times throughout history and also is currently happening around the world.
So obviously what he's thinking of when he says this is like, well, the Nazis, who I think were communists, because I'm an idiot who doesn't know anything, they took guns away, and then they, like, started being Nazis, and that's what the Democrats want to do to America. Except the Nazis only took guns away from, like, Jewish people and gay people and stuff. A big part of the Nazi rise to power was, like, armed brown shirts, armed, like, Hitler Youth and crap like that, right? I mean, when I think about gun control, I don't think about gun grabby Obama, who didn't do any gun control stuff, or gun grabby Biden. I think about Ronald Reagan, who did the assault weapons ban because he was scared of the Black Panther Party having weapons. I think about Trump doing the bump stock ban. I think of conservatives passing gun legislation, and people don't say a thing about it, I guess, but okay.
That makes these conspiratorial critics who observe reality ask the question, is the current administration the ones doing that? Well, we can confidently tell you, no. That question is rooted in climate denialism. Because if it were true, the Biden administration would probably instruct us to inform you of it. Or we would just continuously scare you with viruses and food shortages so you wouldn't notice that they're doing that.
Oh, they're scaring you with viruses and food shortages so you don't notice the guns being taken away. This is like the same as the, like, they made the Johnny Depp trial so that they distract you from the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. This isn't how things work. This isn't how, like, conspiracies exist. The examples I always think about is, like, the Oklahoma City bombing or 9/11, right? So right after the Oklahoma City bombing, there was, like, this big, massive, like, anti-rioting bill that was passed. And after 9/11, we, of course, got, like, the Patriot Act and stuff like that. I don't think it's credible to say, well, they're passing, like, this thing that wouldn't have passed before. Clearly, they planned, the U.S. government or whatever, the globalists or whatever, they planned the Oklahoma City bombing. They planned 9/11 so that they could push through the Patriot Act. No, I think it's more credible, more reasonable to say they have a lot of different agendas that they would like to promote that circumstances won't allow. And when certain things happen, they are then able to pass things like a Patriot Act or the rioting bill, right? Another way I think about this is, let's say, for the U.S. invasion of Iraq, it made Halliburton money. I think it probably did. Let's say that it made Lockheed Martin money. I think it probably did. Let's even say, because they built that huge, like, green zone in Iraq, and Iraq had, like, a crap load of, like, U.S. Personnel in the area, maybe McDonald's, like, built some McDonald's locations in Iraq that were making money. Does that mean that McDonald's, Halliburton, and Lockheed Martin all got together to secretly plan the invasion of Iraq? No, probably not. Probably they have, various things that they always want to be doing. They see sources of money and they go for it, right? This is not, they're fear-mongering of vaccines. They're fear-mongering on shortages so that they could take your guns away while you're distracted. That's not how fucking events work, all right? This is not how the world works if you have a brain and understand things. But okay.
Right now. In other news, the Daily Wire reports that over the weekend, Biden, who was taking a break from causing national emergencies, was whisked away from a beach house because a plane violated airspace.
Was Biden causing national emergencies? I mean, you haven't named any. And he's whisked away from a beach house after a plane violates airspace? And it seems pretty normal for a head of state to do if a plane is violating airspace near them, but okay.
In response to the incident, Biden said, "I didn't know I was at a beach house." On Twitter, Mary Bott chimed in on the issue of gun control when she pointed out that Joe Biden said, "Guns are the #1 killer of children." Fact check, false. Abortions are.
Nope. Abortions don't kill children. Abortions terminate fetuses. Very different things. We can have, well, not we as in me and this guy, but, the broader we can have very interesting discussions on what qualifies for personhood, what qualifies as, death and things like that. but I don't think that he has the cognitive capacity for such a conversation. Let's keep it going.
That's right, Mary. Abortions are pretty good at killing children.
Nope.
We're very proud of what we've accomplished there.
They don't.
But criminals sometimes use guns to commit heinous crimes. Indeed, they do. And we'd also like to extend that logic and point out that rape is a heinous crime committed with a weapon of penises. So we should also be pushing hard to ban those too, along with guns.
Okay. Huh. Well, I mean, penises are like a body part that is like half the population has. That's not the same as like a gun, like at all. That's not really analogous. It's farcical, right? I guess it's just like a silly comparison, but it just doesn't work here is what I'm saying.
And if our ban goes through, there is no telling what kind of impact it'll have on women swimming. But just how brilliantly would a ban on guns work in preventing shootings? Well, for an answer to that question, take a look at these statistics. California ranks number 1 in gun control, and California ranks number 1 in public shootings.
What? California, number 1 in gun control and number 1 in active shooters? That must mean like these things, cause each other, or they're like correlated or something. Oh my, what a smart big boy genius. Let's do U.S. population by state. Oh no, California, which has like the freaking highest population, has like the most of stuff that involves people? No way. You're telling me more people do things that people do here where a lot of people are and not like here where not people are? That's crazy. Okay, so obviously this is not how statistical analysis works.
The brightest minds in our country who don't know what a woman is can only conclude one thing. We need more of those same results. We can also consider that the US has the 3rd highest murder rate in the entire world. Yet, if you remove the cities Chicago, Detroit, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and Philadelphia from the equation, the U.S. would then have the 189th highest murder rate out of 193 countries.
I like this kind of stuff. It's interesting, right? So the U.S. has the 3rd highest murder rate in the world, but if you pretend like these aren't part of the U.S., which they are, but if you pretended that they aren't, well, then it would be way different. Like, yeah, well, the U.S. has 3rd highest murder rate, and if you pretend that males 18 to 35 aren't part of the U.S. population, it goes way down. That's not how stats work. I actually had an argument with someone in the comments of my other JP video in regards to this talking point, and I sent him an article to that regard. So let me see if I can pull up that article real quick, because I thought it had some good stuff in there. Go sort by new, find the article that I linked. Here we go. All right, so this is not how statistical analysis works. When you're comparing like very, very different cities with very, very different demographics, very different levels of, income inequality, very different school systems, very different gun laws or whatever, very different laws around like how police interact with the public in those cities. You can't just compare those. You can't say like, well, let's pretend Chicago doesn't exist. Let's compare like Detroit and Miami. Let's compare Chicago with Switzerland. You can't just compare like such vastly different places like that. Does the city with the toughest gun laws end up with the worst gun violence? On the Washington Post here. Let's have a look. This is part 1 of 2 fact checks examining rhetoric on both sides of the gun debate. On one side of the debate, politicians argue that not only is the right to bear arms protected by the Second Amendment, but also that many of the proposed gun policies aren't effective. On the other side of the debate, members of Congress are calling for policies that they argue could prevent mass shootings and keep guns out of the wrong hands. Right? These are like the 2 sides of like the gun control debate in the US at this time. A spokesperson for Scholars pointed us to a Newsweek article from June 2017 highlighting a string of killings that contributed to a grim milestone, Chicago's 400th homicide this year. There were 781 homicides in 2016. 2016, there were 3,000 shooting instances. From January to June of 2017, 2,100 people have been shot. Chicago ranks 18th out of 20 cities for its per capita homicide rate. The stats don't tell us much without reference points from other cities. This is the big thing the conservatives get wrong here. Data on violent crime from 63 U.S. cities compiled by the Major Cities Chiefs Association shows that in 2016, Chicago had the highest number of homicides and non-fatal shooting incidences, but absolute numbers are misleading because they don't account for differences in population size. Chicago is home to roughly 2.7 million people, while St. Louis' population hovers around 315,000. When the numbers are analyzed on a per capita basis, Chicago does not top that list. In 2016, St. Louis had the highest rate of non-fatal shootings, with 660 per 100,000 people. Chicago, in contrast, had just 89 per 100,000 people. New Orleans had the highest rate of homicides in 2016, with 47 per 100,000 people. Chicago, in contrast, had 16 per 100,000. But this is comparing like Chicago, New Orleans, St. Louis, these like very different areas, very different, demographical breakdowns, very different income inequalities, school systems, police systems. You can't compare this stuff. Scalise' misrepresentation of the data isn't the most controversial aspect of the statement. He's trying to make the case the tough gun laws don't work. He may have a point. The fact checkers once documented how proposed gun laws would not have prevented any mass shootings that took place between 2012 and 2015, but he cannot speak with such certainty. Even if Chicago or Illinois had the toughest gun laws in the country, it borders two states, Wisconsin and Indiana, that have lax gun laws, right? Researchers traced all new guns recovered from crimes between 2009 and 2013, and they found that 60% of the new guns used in gang-related crimes in the city, nearly 32% of the new guns used in non-gang related crimes were purchased in other states, right? So, Democrat ran Chicago has all of these problems and yet they have strict gun laws. Yeah, but you're forgetting that there is totally a market for buying cheapo guns from lax gun law, Wisconsin, Indiana, and then reselling those and making a pretty profit in Chicago. None of that's going to change if you get like a Republican mayor of Chicago. But they act like, well, Republican mayor in Chicago and get rid of all gun laws will like fix this. Like, no, this problem is more complex than that, right? Gun laws aside, Scalise' claim uses some faulty logic. Gary Kleck, a criminologist at Florida State University, says it is an example of cherry-picking the data point to make a case. We've got 50 states. Each of them make dozens of changes to their gun laws each year, he said. All you have to do is be selective. Find some state that happened to have an increase in its violent rates and point to a change in the law. This method can be used to make the opposite case, that states with lax gun laws have more gun violence. For example, Alaska ranks 44th for its lenient gun control policies, according to the Law Center. The state has the highest rate of gun deaths. Louisiana ranks 43rd for its lax policies, and it has the second highest rate of gun deaths. This is flawed also, like the article is admitting this, but this is flawed reasoning, cherry-picked data, comparing very different, areas and saying that it's like the changing gun laws that are causing these sweeping impacts. Not true. Not true for the gun rights crowd, not true for the gun control crowd. Anyway, y'all are welcome to look at the rest of this article if you want. Basically, I feel like the point has been made. Completely idiotic to claim that, America is actually doing really well if you get rid of any parts of the country that aren't doing well. This is not how you do analysis of data, right?
Would then have the 189th highest murder rate out of 193 countries.
And
all 5 of those cities have strict gun control laws and are also controlled by Democrats.
Most major cities are controlled by Democrats. Most major cities are highly populated. Most major cities are going to have a lot of carjackings, shootings, drunk in public, all the stuff that happens when you have a high population.
And we can only conclude once again, we need more of the same, please. And as the U.S. ranks number 1 in global antidepressant use per capita, we can use the soundest science fiction to conclude that the U.S. has a gun problem, not a mental health problem.
The U.S. probably has a gun problem. It certainly has a gun culture problem. But yeah, the U.S. has a mental health problem. These aren't two separated things. We don't have very good health services. We don't have very good access to care. We don't have very good affordability of care. That's all stuff we should work on, which conservatives never want to work on. And then we also might want to look into certain things to do with background checks, or certain things maybe you have to pass some sort of gun safety class, or maybe there has to be some sort of waiting period if you fit a certain criteria or whatever, right? There's things that we can do to address both of these issues. They're not so separated that we can't address both of them with things that work.
And now we take a break from the propaganda to tell you about something that'll actually help you. Tim Kennedy's book, Scars and Stripes, is out now.
Tim Kennedy's book, Scars and Stripes, huh? I wonder what that's about. I wonder if it's any good. Oh, let's go to Amazon. Let's have a look here at Scars and Stripes. Scars and Stripes, an unapologetically American story of fighting the Taliban, UFC warriors, and myself. Oh, look at this. This is a man. This is a manly man. This is the bestseller in Afghan war biographies. It's a pretty specific category there, but okay. Tim Kennedy has a problem. He only feels alive right before he's about to die. Kennedy, a Green Beret decorated Army sniper. I mean, you're not always about to die if you're an Army sniper, but okay. And UFC headliner has tackled a bull with his bare hands, jumped off an airplane, dove into the depths of the ocean, and traveled the world hunting poachers. That's cool. Human traffickers, also based. You know what? The Taliban, why not? Fuck it. He is also the same man who got kicked out of the police department, fire department, and as an EMT before getting 2 women pregnant 4 days apart, and finally been beaten by his special forces colleagues for quite simply being a selfish asshole. I wonder why he got kicked out of the police department or kicked out of the fire department. But okay, so some chud book about some chuddy guy. Cool, I guess. I don't really care.
You want to be entertained and inspired by a man who has bled in the name of freedom, you'll like his book. Get it now wherever books are sold. Scars and Stripes by Tim Kennedy. And in Pride Month news, Pride Month is all about diversity.
Yep.
Which means surrounding yourself with people who look differently than you, but think exactly the same way.
We talked about this in the review I did for American Marxism. That these people seem to think that the left is like this monolith. Oh, all people at Pride, they think the same way. Do they? Have you been on like trans Twitter? Have you been on like LGBT like social spaces and stuff like that? These people are always bickering about like what qualifications mean. Are neo-pronouns valid? Is there such a thing as like early onset dysphoria or whatever? These people have clearly never interacted in a group of people to the left of them because it's full of diversity of thought. They, I guess, don't understand it or don't see it. Just people on the left, they infight a lot, all right? Strong opinions, lots of diversity of thought, lots of infighting. That's just the way the left is, but these folks don't seem to think so.
Because we all know that diversity of thought and ideals is an ugly thing that leads to actual diversity. And that's not what we're trying to do here. But gay pride used to be a beautiful liberal value that seeks equality and respect for the gay community.
So LGBT, Pride Month and stuff, it used to be a cool liberal thing. The conservatives always jump on bandwagons like this. They always act like whatever is the now accepted thing is like where their stance was the whole time and they weren't against it, right? It's like during the George Bush years, no gay marriage, gay people are like disgusting. How will I explain that to my child? Now in 2022, we thought that this is a great idea about the equality. We just think that this trans stuff has gone too far. You can rewind this back forever. BLM, that's too crazy. We agreed with civil rights, but BLM is too crazy. Rewind it back some more. Civil rights, that's crazy. We agree that slavery should be abolished, but civil rights is too much. Women's suffrage is too much or whatever, right? They can just claim that they supported the most recent thing that everyone supports when they didn't. They're reactionaries. They're regressive. They didn't support LGBT stuff then, and they don't support the trans stuff now, and they will continue to be wrong.
Liberal value that seeks equality and respect for the gay community. But now pride has been hijacked by leftism. There's apparently a difference between making sure that gay people have equal rights and are respected as the beautiful people that they are, versus pretending biology doesn't exist and that anyone who doesn't think biological males should be competing in women's sports is a transphobic bigot.
Whew, a lot to unpack there. Okay, so for one, all progressive movements aren't like taken over by leftism, but they're like spearheaded by leftism. Gay liberation, women's rights movements, civil rights movements. These are often headed by people who are familiar with sociology or Marx or otherwise familiar with like radical leftist politics, right? For two, no one's denying biology. You can pretend that that's what's going on, but I guarantee you, trans folks, at least the ones that I've talked to and the ones like I see online and stuff, they spend so much time explaining biology to chuds like this guy that they are quite experts in it. Also, trans folks in sports, like, this is not what all of Pride is about. And there are people on the left that are like undecided on how this kind of thing should be handled. I do think that there is a conversation to be had about trans folks in sports, how they should be placed. How do we divide sports now? You know, we have different rankings for some sports, like weight classes for boxing and stuff like that. But some sports that's not as applicable, like team sports and stuff. Are you going to have like several different weight classes for several different categories of high school women's basketball? Like, I don't think that's going to work, right? Completely moronic to pretend like this is all that Pride is about.
Males should be competing in women's sports is a transphobic bigot. Accordingly, the Babylon Bee points out that researchers have confirmed that despite attempts to add more genders, there still seems to be just 2, plus 767 mental disorders.
Oh, beautiful that he says this because, we agree like that LGB rights are, should have equality and stuff. But this gender stuff, that's just mental disorders, is what this guy's saying, right? But he would have been saying the same thing when homosexuality was considered a mental disorder. He would be saying the same thing, before women's rights movements, when women were branded as hysteria because they're like, occupationally unfulfilled, sexually unfulfilled, their lives are unfulfilling. Oh, you just have hysteria. That's a mental disorder. You don't need women's rights. It's the same story every time. They will keep saying it with every move forward for progressive rights, and they will continue to be wrong.
I don't think there's that many mental disorders. I mean, they've got to be exaggerating. This just in! There's a big difference between supporting kids who think they're trans versus indoctrinating kids to think they're trans.
Yes. There's a difference between kids being trans and being indoctrinated to be trans. One of those things is real, and one of those isn't. Growing up, I never really thought there was anything weird with like same-sex attraction and stuff like that, right? People thought like they're being indoctrinated into it, or it's like a scam or something, or they're like making it up. Like, I know the kinds of things I'm attracted to and the kinds of things I'm not attracted to, right? And so I assume other people also understand that. I know and understand what kind of like gender expression I feel comfortable with. Don't you probably feel that way also? So it's weird to think like, oh, these kids are being tricked and indoctrinated. Like, if you tried to indoctrinate me to have, different sexual attraction or different, gender identity, I don't think it would work because I know how I feel and what like I'm attracted to and how I want to present. I don't think I could be brainwashed out of that fact. But okay.
Think about that. In other news, the nation's 463rd best biological male swimmer gave an exclusive interview to our non-binary sister show, Good Morning America, and expressed the goal of one day making the women's Olympic swim team. And here's the same swimmer indicating how many testicles she swims with. And in honor of Pride
She's got lady balls.
The Daily Wire has released Matt Walsh's new documentary,
Stay triggered, JP.
What is a Woman?, where Walsh seeks to find the answer to the question that we conveniently forgot how to answer, which is, what is a woman?
Yeah, I mean, I recommend, so any folks who are fans of JP who are watching this, totally take an anthropology class. You could sit in on one in your local community college or whatever, right? An anthropology class blew my mind, like my second year, I think, of college, and I'm learning about like, oh wow, all these different cultures all over the world have like very different ways of understanding obligation and exchange and leadership and different ways of understanding what's considered heroic, what's considered like the roles and responsibilities of parents, different family structures. The world's like way more complex than, the nuclear family model that we're kind of taught is like the neutral norm, natural way to be, right? And the same thing goes for what a woman is. Like, oh, a woman is an adult female. Well, what's an adult female? Well, chromosomes. Well, like people have existed way before knowing what chromosomes are, and yet these terms existed. Do you see like chromosomes on people when you're like walking down the street? No. So there's other roles and signifiers that exist that determine like what a woman is outside of, chromosomes or genitalia, which you're not typically seeing anyway, or at least you shouldn't be. And maybe you need to get yourself checked out for microscopic vision or x-ray vision or something if that's the case.
As those of us on the left say the gender binary is nothing more than a social construct rooted in Western colonialism,
but it is.
Matt Walsh went to Africa to speak to tribal people who exist outside of Western colonialism to see if this is true.
Can a man become a woman?
No.
No?
No.
What about a transgender? Transgender?
No.
No?
It will look like if you want to become a lady but you're a man, you have something wrong in your mind.
Wonderful. All right, so JP wasn't wrong when saying that the left says, hey, look, like this gender binary is like a Western psychological construct or whatever. Matt Walsh is apparently going to a place that is outside of this Western hegemony. I guess totally forgetting about like missionaries that went to like spread Christianity and spread Western values and spread Western family structures all throughout Africa and Central and South America and Southeast Asia and everywhere else. Let's just pretend that doesn't happen. Also, how conservative is it to be like, oh, some place that's like non-Western values, I guess I'll just go where the blacks are or whatever, right? They probably checked out this tribe ahead of time, made super sure that they have like more regressive views of gender, and then like went to them and asked them.
Something wrong in your family, something wrong in you. For a man, he has a penis. For a woman, he has a vagina. So we know this is a lady, this is a man.
So notice again, so he's going to like this one tribe. I haven't seen the video, so maybe he goes all over the world, and I hope that he does. But a lot of people on the left will point to things like two-spirit, like Native American tribes that have two-spirit, or they'll point to like the Fa'afafine in Samoa, that's like a third gender, or like in India, it's a third gender. And then other people will say like, well, those aren't perfect or like woke societies either. Like they have problems, India's got like whatever slavery, and like native tribes, they like did things that were, not woke or whatever. Or like in Samoa's got like this or that problem. The people on the left aren't pointing to these other societies that have multiple genders to say, look, they've perfectly figured it out. They're ahead of us. They're just pointing to it, these other cultures, to say, look, it hasn't always been like that. There is this two gender, two sex category within civilizations. That's all they're pointing to. Not that these various cultures have done it perfectly, but just that there is historical precedent that people have understood gender differently, like throughout the world and throughout time.
For a woman, he has a vagina. So we know this is a lady, this is a man.
Apparently, nobody told these tribal people that they're not supposed to have any knowledge of gender, yet they speak about it as if it's objectively true.
Not that they're not supposed to have knowledge of gender, but that their knowledge of gender is limited and regressive. You could tell them that if you want to, but that's what it is.
And for those of us who worship the narrative, it pisses us off that these black tribal people from Africa would say that. That must make us racist and xenophobic. Them. And on to the viewer comment of the week. On the Guns Must Be Banned Now video, Stars and Stripes beat Hammer and Sickle, look it up, that's the username, pretty cool, comments in. Do not let people who surround themselves with barbed wire and armed soldiers tell you that you cannot own a firearm to defend yourself.
Super beta cucked name. Probably like the most correct opinion they might have about things, if I had to guess.
Well, we will not stand for the hypocrisy of pointing out hypocrisy. We pledge to censor this viewer from ever commenting in again until their mind reprogramming indoctrination for their protection is complete. Also, Hydron Powers comments in, Brandon, we need gun control in America. Also Brandon, leaves 300,000 guns in Afghanistan for the Taliban.
Yeah, again, the way that you would handle gun control within your own country with citizens of the country versus what you're doing in foreign policy is like disanalogous, right? Yeah, when the US is engaging in, sort of neo-colonialist, whatever, like foreign policy, they're going to invade a country, spending a bunch of money, making a bunch of money. and then like, oh, well, too expensive to bring those guns back. We don't really like have any further use for this current foreign policy blunder. Let's just like leave the guns there. Common thing that happens, not really analogous with like how you would handle gun rights within your own country with your citizens during non-war time. Not the same thing.
Yeah, it's all going according to plan, Hydron Powers. Well, and something that definitely doesn't have anything to do with that, we'll leave you with this thought from libertarian Spike Cohen. The US government has been arming Ukraine because they're allies. The US government has been seeking to disarm Russia because they're opponents. In totally unrelated news, the US government seeks to disarm you. Yeah, well, I truly hope the US government is successful in disarming all of its opponents, as that would render all of them defenseless against the government. That's it for tonight's news. There's no purpose to guns, we don't know what a woman is, and we'll get rageful as...
There is a purpose to guns. You have not at all demonstrated that they're being taken away in this video. And you don't know what a woman is, apparently, because you have failed to demonstrate this as well.
Hell, if you even attempt to ask that question. Hey, I think I just thought of the only acceptable use for guns. Once the US government confiscates them all, they could then redistribute the guns to people who want to liberate themselves by shooting their dicks off. Tune in tomorrow so we can teach you how to liberate yourself and degenerate yourself at the same time.
Degenerate yourself. Get it? Because they hate trans people and they're scared of them and think they're gross.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey, freedom lover.
And then here he's going to shill, right? So that's JP. That's his videos. Super big claims. Super duper no evidence. Kind of read some headlines. Very, very lame, predictable jokes. I think if you're a fan of his, you would probably learn a lot more, be a lot smarter. You went and subscribed to some more news instead and watched some more news. Lots more sources cited. Look at that. Look at all these sources cited and evidence being given, right? So much better than that Awaken with JP chud. Or also, you should probably subscribe to Radical Reviewer also. Why not, huh? All right. That's Awaken with JP. He's a fucking moron. That's our show.